Let's talk a bit about luck. I would say that luck is the most significant factor when it comes to being successful in life. A lot of people will disagree with this and say that actually hard work, studying, and practicing your skills is more important. Maybe they say this because it actually feels like you are doing something and using your so-called free will or whatever to improve your situation. And there is some truth to this. For example, if you just sit in your room and do nothing, then you won't have any opportunities to be lucky. So if you want to become successful, taking some action is required, of course. But I would say even having the capability and opportunity to develop a professional skill set and then using it in a profitable way is also down to luck. Take, for example, the developed nations during the first half of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century. They had a lot of technology, knowledge and information, wealth, access to cheap energy and resources, political freedom, and so on. These things provided opportunities for people to, for example, attend college and university or trade school and develop a professional skill set that was in demand and become somewhat successful. In the third world or developing countries such as those in Africa or parts of Asia, they didn't really have these opportunities for a long time. People were stuck working low-paying jobs in factories and sweatshops, or maybe they were just subsistence farmers growing their own food by hand or with animals. That takes a lot of time and effort, and maybe they don't even have the free time to learn new skills, especially if those skills are not in high demand in their local area. For example, if your whole society consists of mainly subsistence farmers, then having physical strength or endurance is probably in higher demand than being really smart. So a smart person in Africa maybe didn't have the opportunity to utilize their intelligence and become successful. For a long time, they weren't able to migrate to a Western country either. But I would say even within Western countries, luck is still important. I can illustrate this with an example. Let's take two people, Jim and Bob. Jim is very talented and smart as well as hardworking. He got good grades in school and through a scholarship was able to attend university and get a degree. However, his family is from a working class background, so they didn't have a lot of social connections to higher classes in society. Bob is an average student. He isn't exactly lazy, but not the most motivated student either. Yet he still managed to get a university degree, although with lower grades than Jim. Both of these people applied to the same job position at a corporation. However, it ends up with Bob getting the job. Why? His family is more affluent and well-connected. His dad knew some executives in the corporation and put in a good word for his son. Bob had the basic requirements and good connections, so he got the job. He was lucky to be in that position. In a more meritocratic system, Jim would have gotten the job because he was more qualified. That said, meritocracy has its own flaws. You still have to be lucky, but in a different, more Darwinian way. Let's take, for example, Steve and Dave. They both play basketball. Steve is really into the sport. He plays almost every day and watches a lot of basketball games on TV and studies their strategies and tactics. He also plays for an amateur team and they have regular practice every week. Dave is also interested in basketball, but he plays more for fun and occasionally watches some games on TV, but he isn't too deep into studying the sport. However, he does have some natural talent as well. But here's the kicker. Steve is 5 foot 9 inches tall, which is like average height in many countries, but Dave is 6 foot 7 inches tall. That's a significant height and size difference. If Steve and Dave play against each other, the size difference alone will guarantee that Dave wins most of the games. Did Dave earn his natural talent and height? Nope, it was just given to him through chance by genetics, and his family had enough money to feed him properly to fuel his growth in size. Steve will be stuck playing basketball as a hobby, but Dave has a real shot at becoming a professional player if he starts taking the sport a bit more seriously. That doesn't seem fair considering Steve's interest in the sport, but that's just how the cookie crumbles. This kind of luck goes into other areas of life as well, such as the relationship market. People who are born physically attractive get more potential dating partners and attract other good-looking people as well, while uglier people have less opportunities or no chance at all. Physical attractiveness is down to luck as well. You get dealt a hand of cards at birth, and also due to fetal and early childhood development, as these things can affect your physical appearance, and then you just have to play those cards. You can max out your hand of cards through things like following a proper diet, exercise, and grooming, but you can't get a whole new hand of cards. It's just luck. Now, extreme measures like plastic surgery are a bit hit and miss. Sometimes they can work wonders, but other times they can result in disaster. I would also say this extends to developing other social relationships like friendships. If you are very ugly, people won't be as eager to associate with you unless you have some other redeeming qualities, of course. Even developing a good personality often requires being neurotypical. If you are on the autism spectrum, for example, you will have a harder time developing good social skills and understanding various social cues and body language. This will affect your social, romantic, and even professional outcomes in life. But in this case, it's not really about being exceptionally lucky, it's just about not being unlucky, as most people are neurotypical and a minority are neurodivergent. I may be on the autism spectrum myself, although I have no diagnosis. I just think it's likely because I have had trouble maintaining social relationships throughout my life and made many social mistakes as well. But I will close the video with this. It's still all kind of relative. Humans came from very primitive beginnings. We used to live in straw huts in the forest or the jungle. People back then were okay with that, whereas in modern society, we would see that as living in squalor, like a homeless person living in a tent or something. We can get used to living in very primitive circumstances, but also get used to living in relative luxury. So if you earn a low wage and suddenly get a good job, becoming relatively wealthy, after some time, like 3 or 5 years or something, you will get used to your new situation. It will feel normal to be wealthy, and it won't feel as special anymore. That said, there are circumstances that are legitimately undesirable, like working full-time to barely survive and having very little free time or luxuries. Likewise, a high-stress corporate environment could be less desirable than a job with a lower salary and lower stress. Accomplishing great things is also overrated in my opinion. There isn't much to accomplish or progress really, it's just a distraction if you think about it. Was it really necessary to build these so-called great civilizations, or was it better to just chill in the tropics? Remember to like and subscribe and let me know your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video. Okay, thanks, bye.